Case file number 2711, written by Reflection Wavy. The French Coast, with a twist. This happened to me and a friend at a beach in southern France some years ago. We were sitting on a bench close to the beach. This place is quite busy during the daytime, but very calm and deserted at night, with almost nobody around. As we love to do on weekends or holidays, my friend and I were just chilling, staring at the beach with just a few city lights still up, not far from the shore. It was around midnight when we saw two people who looked like a father around 40 years old and his daughter about 10 years old. To this day, we both clearly remember what they said when they walked past us. The girl, who seemed joyful, told her dad she wanted churros, and her dad replied that she had already eaten something not long ago. We thought, okay, weird. It's very rare to see people here at this time, and even weirder that the kid is still up and wanting churros at midnight, when everything is obviously closed. But hey, nothing that strange. So we just minded our business and kept smoking and chilling. 1 hour later, at around 1 a.m., the exact same dad and daughter were walking in front of us again. What creeped us out a little was that they were saying the exact same thing as earlier. The daughter wanting churros, and the dad telling her that she already ate something not long ago, with the exact same words and inflection. At least, that's how my friend and I both remember it. We were a bit creeped out, but just told ourselves that they might be tourists who love night walks. Weird for a kid this age, but hey, okay. The thing is, the exact same thing happened an hour later, at around 2 a.m., and the exact same conversation, the same words, the same tone. The little girl wanting churros and her dad saying, "No, you already ate not long ago." By then, my friend and I were absolutely creeped out. We hesitated for a second and discussed whether or not we should try following them and talking to them. But my friend was very, very scared. He started to think that they were ghosts and that we should not disturb them, so we just went back home. Funnily enough, we never chilled at that spot again since that day. Well, that night. Unlike my friend, I don't really believe in ghosts. Maybe this was totally normal, but the exact same use of words and the fact that the dad was walking with his daughter this late still feels weird to me. It does sound weird, and maybe they were caught in a temporal loop. They probably weren't aware of anything. It was only you seeing the copy rerun, like a localized replay. Case file number 2712, written by The Lurker X. Version update Earth 1.02. I was driving down the interstate a couple of summers ago, listening to the radio and passing the airport. I saw the sky glitch, and for a second, a rainbow suddenly appeared in front of me, to the left side of my windshield. In the time it took to look directly at it, it disappeared, and a passenger jet suddenly appeared in the sky in front of me, coming in over the road for a landing, as if it had been copy-pasted. Several years ago, I had a vape pen and laid it on a table next to my recliner. When I reached over to get it again, it was gone. I tore the living room apart, flipped the furniture upside down, checked the other rooms, and even pulled out appliances, even though I rationally knew it couldn't be in any of those places. The floor was tile. I would have heard it hit the floor if it had rolled off. It just disappeared, off the table between puffs. I moved out of state, boxed up, gave away or sold everything, and never did find it again. Once, I saw one of our cats walk into my bedroom door. I thought I must have left it open, and just looked like it walked into my door and disappeared, but the door was securely closed. Last spring, my ex and I saw a bird just stuck in the air, a little bit off the ground. A few months ago, I was sitting at work, drinking coffee, and looking out the window at the scene across the street. The tree they had planted near the road looked like static for a split second, changed into a different type of tree with different leaves, and then quickly changed back again. Within a couple of weeks, I also saw this happen to a drink cup on my coffee table. The static anyway. It lasted for a split second, then went back to normal. Just the drink cup, nothing else. And a random spot in the living room did it one night, just above and to the left of my television. And one thing I didn't see happen, but was impossible. A whole business popped up and started doing business over a weekend. I was driving to work and I passed a place that hadn't been there Friday, It was a big barn-type home improvement place, selling lawn and landscaping stuff, with a big double gate and fence, newly opened from the look of it. But there's no way they dozed, put in a pad, parking lot, plumbed, wired, built that building, finished, and stocked it in a couple of days. It's literally impossible. It messed with me badly enough that I turned around, went back, and took another look at it. I had driven that route to work for a couple of years. I had a house I drove by all the time change colors. I thought they must have painted it. I stopped, looked at it, and the paint was peeling. I asked the guy in the yard about it anyway. I asked when they painted it, and he looked at me like I was nuts. I went home and asked my roommate about it and what color it was. He said the same thing, red, and I told him it wasn't, it was blue. He asked me when they painted it. I told him they hadn't. The paint was old and peeling, and the guy who lived there said it had always been blue. Yeah, this is cool. This is a whole ensemble of glitches that happen to you specifically. I don't know what's going on with your life, but your code has errors in it, drawing in glitches. The coolest one for me is just the building or the business that popped up. Even the Amish couldn't have built it that fast. Case file number 2713, written by Jimmy Jam's disciple, Snackrifice. I was just eating a piece of pizza, a pre-bed snack, nothing irregular. I was standing in front of my desk, chopping away, when I went to bite and a loose piece went tumbling toward the floor. Right before it hit the ground, it was just gone. I don't know how else to describe it. It blinked or was deleted, or however you want to imagine it. The crap was just there, and the split second it was going to hit the carpet, it just phased out of existence. Yes, my floor is clean. Yes, I searched the entire room, not just the desk. There wasn't even a drop of oil or a stain on the carpet where it would have landed. It would have been very noticeable if there were. The weird part, it was like I noticed a shock in my body or just a weird uncomfortable feeling the moment it happened. I could easily write it off as a reaction to what I saw, it probably was. But I swear it felt like the feeling came on at the exact same time as the piece disappeared, not as a reaction to it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what my brain was able to put together in the few moments since it happened. I'm going to go to sleep now. Maybe I'm just dumb and the piece will appear somewhere on the carpet and I'll simply have overlooked it. I don't think it will, though. This also occurred in the final minutes of Friday the 13th in my time zone. Spooky. Yes, it is spooky, although I think the Friday the 13th connection is just a random coincidence. But this sensation you felt, like a jolt or a shock, that's never been reported in DOP cases. So I don't know if that's an addition. Maybe it is a reaction to this event. The somatic response was just too extraordinary. But maybe this glitch is on another level. The shock itself revealing a deeper level of disappearance, a total deletion. But why totally delete your pizza? I don't know. Maybe it was poisoned. Case file number 2714, written by Rabbitson12, Silent Playmates. I remember one day my aunt came over for a visit, and she brought these two little boys with her. My dad said I should go play in my room, so I asked the two little boys if they wanted to come and play with me. They smiled and nodded, so we all three went to my room to play. I don't remember everything we did, but I remember my mom passed the room and saw me playing. Shortly after, I got a great idea and asked them if they could help me move my bed against the closet door. I swear on my life, I really wanted to try and lock myself in the closet. No idea why I wanted to, but I did. They looked really nervous about it, but they helped me. I don't remember if the boys spoke at all. No matter how many times I think of this memory, I can't remember if they spoke. Anyway, I went into the closet, and they pushed the bed against the closet doorknob just as I had asked. I distinctly remember hearing them laugh and run out of the room as I was saying, "Okay, I'm scared, let me out." I'm not sure they heard me, but after a few minutes, I just squatted down and started to cry. I was really scared I would be trapped in the closet and no one would find me. It wasn't even 5 minutes that passed before the closet door flew open and there was my mom. She picked me up and comforted me, asking if my aunt had locked me in the closet, but I said no. Once I calmed down, I asked her about the two little boys, What she said chilled me to the bone. What two little boys? Oh. Well, it was your aunt that brought them, so I wonder what she said to this. Were they figments of your imagination the entire time, even in your interaction with your aunt? Oh, I don't know what to make of this one. Damn. Case file number 2715. Written by No Detail 4832. Parallel Girls. Back in high school, I had 3 friends, R, T, and S. After school, we'd often meet at the local shops near school or at T's house. Her single mom worked late, so we usually had the house to ourselves. One day, R and I were walking together and couldn't find T and S at the shops. We decided to go straight to T's house, figuring they'd be there. T lived in a terraced house with a closed backyard, high fences, and no way in and out except the front door. The garden was enclosed by the neighbors' gardens on each side. As R and I walked up the street, T's house came into sight. We saw T and S at the door, trying to insert the key. R and I looked at each other, then shouted their names and waved. T and S turned to each other, quickly fumbled the key into the lock, and ran inside. R and I looked at each other in disbelief. We thought it was rude. What were they playing at? So we ran up the street and knocked on the door, trying to get them to answer. About 2 minutes later, we saw T and S casually walking up the street. When they reached us, we started berating them, thinking they were playing some kind of trick. They were both so confused, so we had to explain what we saw. They were adamant it wasn't them. Then T started getting super freaked out and crying, thinking someone was in her house. She called her mom, who said she was being silly. So we decided to go inside together. We went into the kitchen and grabbed some knives, super stupid, and searched the house thoroughly. There was no one there. We were all so freaked out. It was absolutely T and S that we saw, no mistake about it. 2 high school girls, same uniform. T is black and S is ginger. There was no mistaking them. There was no way they could have gotten out of the house once they were inside without coming back through the front door, which we would have seen. All we could talk about afterwards was how weird it was. I have no doubt in my mind that their reactions were genuine, and they weren't playing a trick on us. It's like we saw their doppelgangers, and they just disappeared. Gives me chills to this day. Case file number 2716, written by Divine Silver Dingo. The Copy-Paste Commuter. A few months ago, I went to Japan. It was a trip of a lifetime for me, with a lot to see and do. One thing I did every day, especially in Tokyo, was take the trains. I was riding the Tokyo Metro one day. I forget exactly where I was going, but at one station I watched a man get on the train. He was Caucasian, shorter than I was, wearing a maroon polo shirt, and slightly balding. He looked sort of like my high school piano teacher, which is why I remembered his appearance. He entered the train, made a left turn from the door, and made his way behind me. Around 2 stops later, the doors opened, and passengers got on and off. There was one particular passenger who got on, a white male, shorter than me, slightly balding, looking like my high school piano teacher. He was wearing the same maroon polo shirt. He came through the door at exactly the same angle, made the same turn, and this time he looked at me, and his eyes looked like he had seen a ghost. It was the same exact passenger at 2 different stops, 5 minutes apart on the Tokyo Metro, entering the same train car at the same angle. This is notable because you both glitched out. The way he looked at you means that he also repeated the same thing. So a shared space-time portal that somehow reset both of you, but no one else noticed anything? Weird. Case file number 2717, written by Where's the Pizza? Now you white it, now you read it. A couple years ago, I was bartending at a busy brunch spot. We had everything on tap, including red and white sangria. In the middle of a rush, I ran out of red sangria and had no idea how to change the keg since I was new. I asked a coworker for help, and after opening the keg, we realized that it was white wine instead of red. Confused, he checked the other 2 kegs, and they were all white wine. We called over a manager. He shined a flashlight into the keg and confirmed what we were seeing, white wine. He poured some into a cup, and it was white, no doubt about it. Then, he called over a second manager just to let him know that someone had placed all white wine instead of white and red. He looked inside the exact same keg, paused, and said, "That's red wine." We all looked again, and somehow, it was red wine. My two coworkers and I stood there stunned. We were all 100% sure we had seen white wine just a minute ago. It felt like reality literally changed in front of us. We all looked at each other like we'd just seen a ghost. No one could explain it, and we never talked about it again. I only worked there for 2 months, but that moment has stuck with me. This was making me think of Jesus changing water into red wine. It is red wine, right? I think not. Is it just wine or red wine in the story? Well, anyways, as far as I know, it's red wine. So, some guardian angel changed white to red? And back again? I don't know. Curious. Case file number 2718, written by Oreo, a friend in the snow. I was driving on my way to work, just like I do every morning. It's about a 30-minute drive, almost entirely highway. It had snowed the night before, and while there was still some snow on the ground, the highway was mostly clear, except for the shoulders. I am an absolute stickler for having my seatbelt on and ensuring everyone else in the car does too. However, on this particular day, about 15 minutes into my drive, I noticed that mine wasn't on. I buckled myself up, and then felt the most weird feeling of dread and doom throughout my whole body. I told myself, "You're fine, nothing to be worried about." But then 30 seconds later, I looked to my right and saw snow flying everywhere. A white work van started spinning. So much snow was flying that I couldn't see anything at all. In that moment, time slowed down and I told myself, just drive straight. Do not try to correct, because you can make this worse. Keep in mind that I was driving a 2000 Mercury Cougar stick shift, so there was a huge size difference between the vehicles. I was in the left lane, and at this point of the highway, there were only 2 lanes. We were also coming down an overpass portion of the highway, so to my left was a large drop to a lower road, and to my right was a lane the van was in. As I kept driving straight, the van appeared right in front of me and hit my passenger side toward the nose of my car, sending me straight to the left, through the median, and toward the other side of the highway with oncoming traffic. I had just passed the bridge portion where the middle of the highway was a grass median. All kinds of smoke poured through my car, and I couldn't really see anything. My airbag had deployed, but luckily I didn't hit it. As I looked through the smoke, I saw what I was heading straight for, the other side of the highway, and I started to turn the wheel as hard as I could to go back the other way. The median had an embankment on both sides. As I reached the top of it, towards the southbound side, I slowly started heading back to the middle and barely missed going into the road on the other side. I had to pretty much put all my weight into the door to even get it cracked enough to get out. I escaped the crash with some real bad whiplash and bone bruises, but nothing serious at all. What's really crazy is that I lost my best friend almost exactly a year before that day to a substance overdose, and for some reason, I wanted to wear a white shirt with his picture on it and in memory of his name under my work clothes. Had I not been wearing my seatbelt, I would have either gone through the windshield or hit the windshield and been knocked unconscious, which would have sent me into oncoming traffic, possibly leading to a head-on collision with another car. Turns out the driver was texting and driving on the highway, drove onto the shoulder, hit some ice, and started spinning out of control. I honestly can't explain the feeling I had, and I honestly think my best friend was looking out for me that day. To this day, I'm very thankful I made it out alive. Yeah, your friend is a guardian angel, who knows? That's a beautiful thought, though. Case file number 2719, written by Winkleberry1. License, registration, and cake. My best friend and I shared the same birthday. On our 18th birthday, we both had the day off from work, so we headed to the beach in the afternoon. We were on a 1-lane road, and I let myself get distracted, accidentally rear-ending the car in front of me. We were going maybe 5-10 miles per hour when we hit, if that, as it was a stop-and-go traffic situation. A motorcycle cop heading the opposite direction on this road passed by just as our bumpers touched. He made a U-turn, and we all pulled into what I later found out was my voting precinct. They were having local elections that day, in fact. The officer spoke to the other driver first, and we walked closer to them. He was already looking at the other driver's information. He then took my license, registration, and insurance, and walked back over to his motorcycle, where the other driver was standing. I turned to talk to my friend and heard the officer say, "Well, happy birthday." In unison, the other driver and I replied, "Thank you." That is pretty cool. Same birthday, accident, huh? Probably just a coincidence, but you never know. Case file number 2720, written by Burnt Out IT Guy. That one night in the desert. I was driving home from Vegas after conducting some business. It was the middle of the night, around 3 a.m., and I was somewhere in the New Mexico-Arizona desert. It was pitch black, and every star was visible in the sky. As I cruised along at about 70 miles per hour, I saw a light hovering above the highway. It was about the size of my hand and was blinking. It was probably a good 3/4 to a mile away. As I approached it, it continued to blink periodically, with no discernible pattern, and just hovered there above the highway, but it didn't appear to get bigger as I got closer. I drove under the strange, hovering, blinking light and looked back, but I could not see the light at all after passing beneath it. I don't know if it simply vanished or if it was somehow not visible from the other side. Adding to the mystery is the fact that I had been awake for close to 20 hours at that point and was hopped up on caffeine, trying to stay awake. So my brain may not have been processing things clearly. I'm a skeptic, but to this day I don't know what that light was. Aliens! Woo! What do you think, Dave? Is it aliens? He agrees. Case file number 2721, written by Res30Stupid. Too late to blame the cat. My mom always believed in banshees, or more specifically, that there's one watching over her family, though clan would be a more appropriate term. She insists on never opening the windows or doors, convinced that bad things will happen if she does. Normally I consider the banshee's cry to be nothing more than our neighbor's cat locked outside, and I get annoyed when they start hissing. Most times that's exactly what it is, and I yell at the cats to leave, then talk to the neighbor the next day. However, there are 3 times I've never done so, and that was due to a spine-chilling wind suddenly enveloping me. Each time, a relative on my mother's side of the family or someone who had married into the family died either the night of the sound or the next day. This includes my Uncle James, who was killed in a car accident on the way to work, my Uncle Seamus, who was dying of lung cancer, and my Uncle Owen, who died of, I can't remember, but I think it was a heart attack. And the weird thing is, I'm not the only person to experience this in my family. As I said, my mom believes in the banshee and says it follows her entire family. When my aunt's husband died way back in the early 90s, she heard the banshee. When James died, at least 5 other people, not counting my mom but including his wife and 2 of my cousins, heard her wailing. When Seamus died, about 6 people heard it. It's really freaky. Especially since I only recently found out the cat had been dead since shortly after the first time I heard the banshee. Ah, yes. Can't blame the cat. Case file number 2722, written by Cool Ghoul. The Grandpa Anomaly. My dad has recounted this story for years. Every day after work, my dad made it a habit of walking over to my grandparents' room to tell my grandpa he was home. My grandpa would usually be found standing in front of his TV, watching old westerns. He's legally blind, so he has to stand fairly close to make out the images on screen. But he would always turn to say hello. One day, my dad came home and found him at his usual spot. He said, "I'm home." Except this time, my grandfather didn't turn around. So my dad, assuming he didn't hear him or was too engrossed in the show, knocked on the doorway and announced it louder. "I'm home." My grandfather still didn't move. My dad chalked it up to bad hearing and gave up. He went to the living room and sat down, not thinking much of it until the phone rang. My grandfather had a habit of answering the phone within the first 2 rings, but this time it kept ringing. My grandma turned to my dad and said, "Aren't you going to get that?" My dad answered confidently, "Dad'll get it. He's in his room." My grandma, confused as hell, said, "Your dad left this morning to run some errands. He hasn't been home since." My dad argued still. "Oh no, he's home now. I just saw him in his room watching TV." My grandma shook her head and said, "I'm telling you, he's not home." My dad got up to check, hoping to prove my grandma wrong, but found the room empty with the TV off. My grandpa came home later that evening and said he hadn't been home all day. I think the weirdest part is that the TV was on in your father's, not imagination, but visual experience. So, was it seeing into a different universe? Maybe. Case file number 2723, written by Representative Pool, 35. One lid, last seen near boiling water. Last week I was cooking rice for dinner and making it with pork. I realized the rice would take about 20 minutes to cook and the pork about 45 minutes. Since the water was already boiling for the rice, I put the pork in the oven, took the heat off the stove, and removed the lid from the rice pot. I then played the crossword on my phone for about 10 minutes to pass the time so that both dishes would be ready simultaneously. I distinctly remember placing the perfect fitting lid right next to the pot. After 10 minutes, I looked at the stove and the lid was much larger. It wasn't the one I was using before. It looked identical to a lid for a larger pot that I already own. The lid to the smaller pot was nowhere to be found. I initially dismissed it as perhaps not thinking clearly about the lid when I started boiling the water, but I know the lid was smaller. Now I have 2 identical lids for a larger pot and no lid for the smaller pot, and I've never had these 2 larger lids before. It's been a week, and I've conducted a deep and thorough search through my kitchen, with no sign of the smaller lid. I told my family about it, and they also find it strange because they don't recall our household ever having 2 identical larger lids either. Case file number 2724, written by Jenny V. 753, 2 Sons and a Storm. Starting when my son was about 4 months old, he would sleep in a rocker chair next to my bed. He would wake up between 5 and 6 a.m., and I would put him next to me and breastfeed him. We would both fall back to sleep. I know some people think this is dangerous, but I don't move in my sleep and never had problems laying with my nephew in the past. I think this happened when he was 4 or 5 months old. I woke up and everything was blurry and strangely bright. I kept hearing a noise and everything, including my TV, was very loud. The noise that woke me up was what I thought was the sound of my father blowing raspberries at my son, making a farting noise with his mouth. He did this a lot. I remember wondering what my father was doing in my bedroom. I couldn't move my body, only my eyes at first. It was also like a tornado was in my room, like this crazy wind blowing. I rolled my eyes to the right where my son's rocker was set up next to the bed, and I saw his feet kicking like crazy, but he wasn't making a sound. He was kicking so much that the chair was rocking frantically. I couldn't see anything but his legs. But then I started freaking out because I remember putting him in bed with me so he could feed. So I rolled my eyes to my left, and my son was there, sleeping soundly. I rolled my eyes to the right, and I saw his legs kicking in the chair. I was so confused and started freaking out. Everything seemed to be getting louder. I put my eyes straight ahead and slowly started trying to make my body parts move. I started with my toes, then legs, then waist, and then I finally just bolted into a sitting position. Everything stopped, dead quiet except my TV quietly playing what was on. I looked over at my son on my bed and he was still asleep. I looked at his rocker and nothing was there. Well, this sounds like sleep paralysis, though not with a demon or anything nefarious like that. It's a strange sleep paralysis episode, but I guess if you have sleep paralysis, why does it have to be a demon or something evil, right? Couldn't you have sleep paralysis and imagine bubblegum and fairies and, happiness? Why does it have to be a nightmare illusion when you're trying to wake up, but your brain hasn't unlocked your body yet? Case file number 2725, written by Gil PR. Everyone hated that room. I grew up in an old Tudor-style house built around the turn of the century. I inherited the giant attic bedroom when my older brother got in trouble one too many times. The room had a sloped ceiling and short walls on the sides, with small doors that provided access to the eaves. The doors were old, plain, and thick, with quarter-turn gate-style latches that would take all my weight to unlatch. One night, within the first year of moving up there, I was woken up by the loud crack of the latch opening. Then the door slammed open and closed violently, 4 or 5 times, before closing again, and the latch creaked shut slowly. I ran downstairs screaming, and my parents checked it out. They thought I dreamt it because they didn't find anything out of place. There was a dent in the drywall from the latch where the door opened, but they swore it was there before. I spent the next afternoon piling as many boxes from our storage area against that door as would fit. I didn't have any other really strange experiences during my younger years. I eventually graduated from high school, joined the Army Reserves, and went to live on my own. When I was about 20, my parents bought their own house on the other side of town. The Tudor house was owned by my grandpa, though he hadn't lived there since I was 3 or 4. Because the Tudor house was now unoccupied, I moved back in for about a year to save my grandpa some insurance money. While I was living there, I stayed in the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. After a while, I got familiar with most of the weird sounds and had effective rituals, checking doors, windows, alarms, etc., that kept me from getting too freaked out. I was mainly worried about intruders as there had been some break-ins nearby. I had a couple of different groups of friends over a lot that year for game nights or parties, and they would regularly talk about hearing things or feeling like someone else was in the room with them when they were definitely alone. The thing that made me go, what the fluck, more than anything else, was talking to my friends from different circles over the years since living there, who described identical experiences as other friends of mine that they'd never met. I've heard more than a dozen different people who visited me during that year talk about the hair standing up on the neck every time they stood on the landing in the main staircase, and feeling their stomach get queasy by the back door. My grandpa's study was the first door at the top of the stairs, also my little brother's bedroom when my family was there. And more than a few of my friends told me with the same words that they hated that room and completely avoided it, often running past it when they were there by themselves. Yeah, having different friends that don't know each other corroborate the same exact events with the same kind of words and description, well, that is very strong evidence. Now time for the jokes of the day. I was cuddling with my wife when she said, "Treat me like I'm a queen." So I married her off to our neighbor to strengthen our political alliance. Nice. My wife really hates it when my 20-year-old neighbor sunbathes topless. Me, I'm on the fence. I just got fired from my job at the ice cream factory. I refuse to work on Sundays. I just eat them all. My wife asked me why I never buy her flowers. I didn't even know she sold flowers. I called the tinnitus hotline. It just kept ringing. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony, signing off.